Thanks for taking the time to join us for this Antarctica webinar. My name is Elisa Martin, and I'm a Senior Marketing Manager here at Lindblad Expeditions National Geographic. Before we get started, if at any point you lose your connection to the video, go back to the email and re-enter the webinar through the link provided. You'll soon see that on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a box where you can type in your questions. Some of you have already typed in some questions. Thank you. We encourage you to type them in throughout the presentation, and we'll answer them at the end. And I apologize ahead of time if we can't get to all of them, but we'll provide an email address at the end where you can send any remaining questions. Also, if you're inspired today to make a new booking by March 31st, we will provide free airfare on select Antarctica voyages in 2014. So before I turn you over to Steve McLean, who is the Lindblad naturalist you came to hear today, just a bit of background for those who aren't familiar with Lindblad Expeditions. We've been exploring the Antarctic for decades, and we have over 50 years of expedition travel experience around the world. Lars-Erik Lindblad, who is pictured here, was a pioneer in expedition travel, and he brought the first non-scientific travelers to Antarctica in 1966. And he was the first to lead expeditions to the Galapagos, to the Seychelles Islands, and to Arctic Svalbard, for instance, and many more. Today, we're led by his son, Sven Lindblad, and we are proud to carry on the Lindblad legacy. And what that means is a strong commitment to responsible tourism and to safety. In 2004, Lindblad Expeditions entered into a partnership with the National Geographic Society, a perfect partner, and we are celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. Hard to believe. Both organizations care deeply about inspiring people to explore and care about the planet. It allows us to offer unparalleled benefits to our guests, enabling you to travel to some of the top, with some of the world's top photographers, explorers, researchers. The flagship of our fleet is the National Geographic Explorer, pictured here in 4 different slides, and she carries 148 guests. And our newest ship is the National Geographic Orion, and she carries 102 guests. You'll hear more later about their special tools for exploration. Here's another view of the ship, some penguins in the front. One of the biggest differences between us and our other ships out there is our expedition team. I cannot say enough about them. Their knowledge, their enthusiasm will absolutely make your voyage. We have the most robust team in the Antarctic with a wide variety of expertise: marine biology, glaciology, botany, penguins, polar exploration, and so much more. And we maintain an outstanding staff-to-guest ratio of 1 to 10 or better. And that I'm referring to expedition staff-to-guest ratio of 1 to 10 or better. And what this means is you have more learning, more personal attention, more flexibility in offering kayaking and hiking and Zodiac excursions, so that you can choose from activities that are often operating all at the same time. And rest assured, you will be traveling with the best ice team. Expedition leader, 8 naturalists, an undersea specialist, a National Geographic photographer, plus a photo specialist, global perspectives, guest speakers, wellness specialists, and a video chronicler. Well, you'll hear more about all of those later on. Today we are very pleased to be joined by Dr. Steve McLean. He is a veteran Lindblad naturalist, and he has years of experience in the ice and a real passion for polar landscapes and all of its creatures. Steve has a PhD in zoology, and he was on the faculty of the University of Alaska Fairbanks for 26 years. He lives in Anchorage now, and he's just returned from his Antarctic season aboard the Explorer. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Elisa, and hello to all of you out there through the miracles of modern technology. I'm talking to you from Anchorage, Alaska. I hope it's as nice where you are as it is here.
We got a little rain today, Steve, in New York. But I'm going to turn this over to you now, and you take us through the expedition experience.
Well, I was telling Alyssa that we got 9 inches of fresh snow here in Anchorage, and we kind of like that. Okay, So why is it that you're interested in going to Antarctica? I think you've made a great decision to express interest, and I hope we can fill that out for you today. It is a unique place on the globe. It is the only a continent that is completely separated by water, by the Southern Ocean, from all of the other continents. It is owned by no nation. It is administered by a large group of nations that have joined together in the Antarctic Treaty. You may know that there are 7 nations that have made claims on Antarctica, but under the Antarctic Treaty, to which they have all agreed, these claims are held in abeyance and nothing can be done there. It is a continent dedicated to science, dedicated to peace, dedicated to nature. You may have heard it is the coldest, windiest, driest of all continents. It is that, but the part that we visit, the part to which we take visitors, is that piece that's sticking up. If Antarctica was the face of a clock, it's that piece that's sticking up towards 10 o'clock there. This is called the Antarctic Peninsula, and it is very much the warmest and especially the most accessible part of Antarctica. The closest land is the southern tip of South America. It is Ushuaia, Argentina, that is our gateway. So here's another view of the Antarctic Peninsula. You can see that it's very mountainous, particularly along the northern and western side, flatter on the eastern side. The eastern side borders on the Weddell Sea. This is an area that's extremely icy. Sometimes we can go there, sometimes we can't. It's not something we can schedule in advance. It's all a function of what the ice allows us. But either side, we are sure of being able to explore the western side. Often we can get into the Weddell Sea side as well. Both sides are incredibly scenic, and both sides are incredibly rich in wildlife. Of course, one of the nicest things, particularly for me living up here in the far north, is we go to Antarctica during the southern summer. And when it's darkest and coldest up here, it is lightest and warmest down there. That light hit, I can't describe the benefits of that light hit in December, January, when the dark of home is beginning to get to you. It's really quite a remarkable place. One of the remarkable aspects of Antarctica is the wildlife, and particularly the approachability of the wildlife. Rather interestingly, it has in common with the Galapagos that the wildlife is very, very unafraid. We're able to have very close encounters with the wildlife. This is a special sort of year in Antarctica. A lot of the interest in Antarctica lies with the history of polar exploration, and it was just 100 years ago that Ernest Henry Shackleton and the men of the Endurance left England to attempt the Transantarctic expedition. Of course, I think you're all aware they never made it to land, and it turned into one of the most incredible survival stories to be told. We'll be happy to share that story with you when you're on the ship, but it was just 100 years ago. So here's a shot taken by Shackleton's photographer, Frank Hurley, of the Endurance caught in the ice of Antarctica. I mentioned the approachability of the wildlife. We do have a regulation. Antarctic tourism is regulated by an industry group called the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators. Under the guidelines, we cannot approach the wildlife to within 5 meters, or about 16 feet. The wildlife don't necessarily read the same regulations, and if you simply sit quietly, the wildlife will often come right up to you, enable you to get some pretty spectacular photographs to show off to your friends and family when you go home. So this is an Adelie penguin being photographed on the Antarctic ice. The next one, another Adelie penguin leaping off of the ice into the water. Alyssa mentioned that there will be a Natural Geographic photographer on your trip, but I want to emphasize that these are pictures that all of you can take and bring home. These aren't just the work of the National Geographic photographer. These are chinstrap penguins coming in through the surf to make a landing at a place called Bailey Head on Deception Island, from which they will trek up to their colony, nesting colony on the hills above. Here, more Adelie penguins gathering up on the ice, having a bit of a discussion, each of them trying to convince their partners to be the first to go into the water to test to see if there might be a leopard seal down below. Really, really fun to watch when they all go off in a big rush. In addition to the birds, the penguins, we have a richness of seals. The upper left, a crab-eater seal. The lower left, a Weddell seal. The upper right, an elephant seal. All of them quite approachable, giving us wonderful views. Rich in marine life because the Antarctic waters, the water is cold, but it is very nutrient rich. It is very productive. So in fact, there's lots of food during the summer season when there's light for the production of krill and all of the things that like to eat the krill. On the next slide, there we go. One of the things that likes to eat both krill and, given the opportunity, penguins, is the cue the ominous music. This is the leopard seal, one of the real finds, and we'll see this on every trip to Antarctica. In addition to the seals, it is an area that is rich in whales. This humpback whale you see leaping out of the water in front of an iceberg calved off of an Antarctic glacier. We have humpback whales, we have minke whales, we have killer whales. Often we see fin whales, sometimes, rarely, but sometimes we see blue whales, we see toothed whales. It's really quite an exciting spot. The next, another shot. You can see the humpback whale is larger than our ship in the background. No, it's actually not larger, but it's an awful lot closer. This is a humpback whale in its breaching behavior, which we see on most trips. Killer whales. This is a group of Antarctic killer whales checking out, we call it spy hopping, where they're going up and having a look, checking out this seal on the water. Alyssa mentioned our partnerships. In recent years, we've had a partnership with a group of killer whale biologists out of La Jolla, California, and they come around on our ship and conduct their research. So the guests get to hear about killer whale biology from the best in the world's leading authorities, and they get a ride on their ship. They also enjoy sharing their knowledge about killer whales. So on some of our departure, you might find them. This particular case, an emphasis that you don't have to be this is not a picture by a highly skilled photographer. I was in another Zodiac at the same time and have a similar picture of my own. You'll be happy to know that the whales checked out the seal, decided leopard seal was really not what they wanted to eat this time. They were more interested in a nice pudgy Weddell seal, and they swam away and left the seal on the ice. But this is the kind of experience we have. Now, we often say, you come to Antarctica for the wildlife, you come back for the ice. The ice really gets into you. It gets into your psyche. And when I say come back, we do have guests that have come back 3, 4, 5, 7 or more times to experience Antarctica, perhaps at different times of the year. The ice is staggering in its beauty. These are both pieces of glacial ice that have come down off of the continent, calved into the waters. In addition, we get to experience the sea ice that forms each season, freezing the ocean, and then gradually breaks up as the season goes on. This is a piece of glacial ice, crystal clear, with this blue color, which is characteristic of the clear glacial ice. I'm sure you'll see it. It's just a place where you lose your inhibitions. Very few people go, few people get to see. Exhilaration is truly the word for it. And here's an example of what the exhilaration will do to you. Each trip, given the conditions are right, we try to invite you or offer you the opportunity to throw yourself into the water. I assure you that the water is cold. How cold? Well, less than the freezing point of fresh water. Very cold, but this is what we call the polar plunge, and we will have 40, 50, 60 people standing in line. You can see them by the open hatch in their robes, waiting their turn to leap into the water. It causes an endorphin rush. You'll be high for the rest of the day from the experience. Just the kind of giddiness, the craziness that a trip to Antarctica brings out in all of us. Now, an expedition is not a cruise. A cruise, you sit on the ship and look out. In an expedition, you do things. And we will have you off of the ship in various activities 2 or sometimes even 3 times in a day. Sometimes that activity might be a walk aboard on shore. This is a spot where we have landed in a place called Nemo Harbour, which is off of Anvord Bay. And so it is actually on the Antarctic continent itself. Many of you will be happy to have knocked off your 7th continent after you have stood on Antarctica. You have stood on all 7 of the Earth's continents. So being on the continent, in principle, you could walk from here to the South Pole, but since we are really about 1,500 miles from the South Pole, we'd prefer you not try it. Instead, you can trudge up through the snow here to a wonderful lookout, looking out over the islands, admiring the glaciers, admiring the snow and ice. In Anvord Bay, in the background, is a spot where we very often see humpback whales and minke whales. So this is just an example of a daytime excursion in Antarctica. Now, some of the trips, not all of the trips, but Alyssa will describe a couple of the itineraries soon, but some of our trips will include the Antarctic island of South Georgia and the Falkland Islands. Now, South Georgia is a most remarkable place. I think we like to try to tell people why they should go to Antarctica. Once they convince them that they should go to Antarctica, then we say, you know, you really ought to choose a trip which includes South Georgia and the Falklands. If you're not likely to come back again, you want to grab the opportunity. Why? It is, as this slide indicates, one of the great wildlife spectacles of the world. Nesting colonies of 100,000 pairs of king penguins, as you see 2 king penguins engaged in their elegant courtship behavior. Incredible scenery. Farther north, so it is greener than Antarctica, but still covered with glaciers. You probably recall Shackleton, together with Tom Crean and Frank Worsley, walked for 36 hours across the glaciers of South Georgia to bring rescue to the men waiting on Elephant Island. Here's a shot of just a small part of a colony of king penguins. And king penguins have this wonderful breeding season. It takes about 17 months, which means that they can only breed twice in every 2-year period, and every 3-year period, and there are young to be seen at any time of the season. So it's a great, spectacular place to visit. Breeding wandering albatross, the largest bird on the planet in terms of its wingspan, breeding light-mantled sooty albatross, which many of us consider the most elegant bird in the whole wide world, as well as the penguins and the seals. And here's my favorite. This is I love to go to South Georgia early in the season, perhaps November, to watch the elephant seals on the beach. These are a couple of bull elephant seals. Now that animal on the left, that's probably standing up 8 feet from the ground to the tip of his elephantine schnoz. These are 2 elephant seals engaging in a battle to claim a bit of territory on a breeding beach, because with that territory comes the right to mate with the females who have come ashore to give birth. So we will see the females, we will see the young, recently born and recently weaned young pups, and we will see the males, and I absolutely love bull elephant seals. South Georgia is also very, very rich in history. It was in 1904, right here at Grutviken on Cumberland Bay, that the Antarctic whaling industry began. Carl Anton Larsen, a Norwegian whaler, established the first whaling station here, which you can just see over the top of that white building, kind of on the left-hand side. So it's rich in Antarctic history, but it is also the point Shackleton came down here after leaving England in late 1914, put in here in Grutviken Harbor, and from here left to attempt his crossing of Antarctica. It was back on South Georgia that the incredible tale of the Endurance and the rescue of the men came to its conclusion. In 1920, Shackleton left on another voyage on a ship called the Quest, and it was here, you'll see, find the ship and follow the coastline along to the right, and you see the point. I'm pointing to it with my cursor, which is not doing you the least bit of good, but that's a place called, there we go, there's our ship, and over there to the right, there we go, that's Prince Edward Point, and it was there Shackleton had anchored his ship, gone to visit the whaling station where he was treated as a returning hero, gone back to his ship, suffered a massive heart attack, and he perished here on South Georgia. They were sending his remains back home to England via Montevideo, and his wife Emily sent a telegram that said, no, leave him there, that's where he belongs. Can you back up for me one, Alyssa? There you go. So Shackleton is buried here in the whalers' graveyard at Grutviken, and we always visit that on our way through South Georgia. So there you see on the right a group of people who have gathered to raise a dram in toast to Sir Ernest Shackleton, who was buried there, and there on the left that granite marker marks the grave of Ernest Shackleton here in the whalers' graveyard at South Georgia. This is a picture of the same spot, but taken 100 years earlier, taken by Shackleton's photographer, Frank Hurley. Mount Paget, the tallest point in South Georgia, in the background. Now on trips that include South Georgia, either coming from Ushuaia, Argentina in the fall or going back to Argentina in the spring, we stop by the Falkland Islands, quite a remarkable place. It really didn't come to our attention very much until, of course, 1980-81, when it came into the focal point of conflict between Argentina and Britain, which was resolved, of course. It remains very much British overseas territory. It is farther north. It is much more cold temperate in climate, but it is an incredible place for wildlife. Rockhopper penguins on the upper left, the beautiful blue-eyed shag in the upper right, and nesting black-browed albatross down there at the bottom. It is the Falkland Islands have the largest population of nesting albatross of any place in the world. It's an incredible place then to see wildlife, but it also has a permanent human population, not very many, only a few thousand, but they consider themselves very, very much, much British. Here is the Episcopal Church, the cathedral in the capital city of our capital town of Stanley, and in front of it you see the 4 structures forming an arch. Those are actually the jawbones of blue whales, giving you just an indication of how big a blue whale really is. They're very, very rugged people. They're traditionally a sheep ranching and sheep farming people. So I said, very, very British, and very happy to have their visit and share a little of their islands with you. Okay, Alyssa mentioned our 2 flagships, our 2 ships, the National Geographic Explorer and the Orion. These are very much expedition ships rather than cruise ships. They're ships meant to get out and do things. They are fully stabilized, which takes a lot of the rocking and rolling out of the ocean, and they have high ice class. That is, they are able to go into ice-choked waters that other ships would not. They are not icebreakers, and I think that is a good thing. I do not think you want to go to Antarctica. Excuse me. I don't think you want to go to Antarctica in an icebreaker. An icebreaker has a very rounded hull, no keel to speak of, and very steep sides. They're very, very tippy ships, and these are very stable ships, but they allow us to travel safely into very icy waters. 148 guests on Explorer, 102 guests on Orion. They are both very informal. Don't pack the tuxedo unless you want to go ashore and get a picture taken with a penguin while you're wearing your tuxedo. You can leave the tie behind. You can leave the gowns behind. Nobody really minds if you wear the same clothes in the lounge on different evenings. Very informal atmosphere. There you go. One of the keys, one of the main tools of expedition travel are the black rubber inflatable vessels we call Zodiacs. And the Zodiac is really the key to our operation. There are no docks, there are no piers, there are no quays in Antarctica. To get from the ship to the land, we offload through the side of the ship, the same hatch where you saw the polar plungers earlier, and this is the way we get ashore. They also are used for cruising around the ice, cruising around the wildlife, something that we very much love doing. You get to sit very quietly in comfort on the ship, but we get to drive them, which is a lot of fun too. I'm sorry you don't get to drive it unless you're under the age of 13, but you will come to love the Zodiacs. In a very short period of time, the expedition leader might decide, you know, we really ought to get off and go Zodiac cruising here. And in a short matter of time, we're off into the Zodiacs and away we go. So here, the top illustration, cruising around some ice. The lower illustration, that's actually a humpback whale that came up right next to one of the Zodiacs. Question we often get, after you booked, you will be sent a lot of instructions, guiding material, and it will talk about bringing rubber boots. We often get asked, do we really need the rubber boots? The answer to that question is most definitely in the affirmative. Yes, you will need the rubber boots, and you'll see why here. The Zodiac pulls up near the shore. You have a waiting group of staff, naturalists, waiting to stabilize the Zodiac, and then you will delicately swing your legs over the side, step off into perhaps 6 inches, 8 inches of water, and walk ashore. So that's why you will want your boots. This incidentally is on South Georgia. Those are king penguins in the background and a glacier tumbling out of the mountains behind. But that's the Zodiac. You'll come to love them. Some years ago, we added something new to our vessels, and it's been wildly successful. Sven-Olof Lindblad, that is, had the idea maybe we could offer people the opportunity to kayak in the polar regions, in the ice. Whoa, there's a radical idea, and it has worked out spectacularly. Now, the kayaks, as you see here, are inflatable. They are not Inuit-style kayaks. They are not sit-in, they are sit-on. Very comfortable, extremely stable. So we can put two people together in a kayak, give you each a paddle, and off you go. And within limits we've set for safety reasons, you can go where you want. It's a great experience. I want you to think for just a moment about how it will be telling your friends and family back home about how you went kayaking in the ice of Antarctica. Here are a group of gentoo penguins swimming by using the behavior we call porpoising, where they leap out of the water. So you can go where you want. Everybody has the opportunity. We have, this is not whitewater rafting kind of Olympic kayaking. We've had people in their 60s, in their 70s, and even in their 80s kayaking enjoyably and safely. If we can get you, we developed a way of getting you in and out safely, you'll love it. Another addition to the program, for years we were taking people into the polar regions, showing you traveling above the sea, obviously, and taking you to land, but not showing you what was underneath the water. We have developed an undersea program where now we can show you what is under the water. We have a member of staff that we call an undersea specialist. He or she, one of them is a female, highly qualified cold water divers, so they can scuba dive carrying a camera with lights, photograph what's down. If the water is too deep, or we have any one of a number of other reasons, we also carry what we call a remotely operated vehicle. Think of it as a tethered drone that goes down, again, with camera and lights, photographing what is seen below. We bring this up to the surface. The footage is edited, and a presentation will be made commonly the same night of what was seen below the area over which you were traveling. I want to emphasize that this is all footage shot on your trip. This is not stock footage, the best of Antarctica underwater. This is footage on your trip, and I feel safe to say it is always spectacular. You will be amazed at how much there is under the sea in Antarctica. So here's one of our undersea specialists set up for scuba diving. No, we do not invite our guests to join. This is dry suit diving, much more technical than the recreational diving you might have done in the Caribbean. But our divers come down and they bring up spectacular footage. The photography program, another expansion since our affiliation with the National Geographic Society. Every trip will have a National Geographic representative, but also quite a number of our naturalists are also professional photographers, and they have been trained, certified as photo instructors. The idea is to help you, regardless of your level of previous experience and expertise, take the best possible pictures and make the most of your experience. So this covers everything from the great big bazooka lenses down to the pocket-sized point and shoot. We will provide equal attention and care to all levels of photography. The objective is to make you a better photographer. And this will include presentations on how to take better pictures. The photographers might share with you some of their pictures each evening. Not necessarily their best pictures. You may learn when they show you one of their not best pictures and tell you why they think they could have done better. You'll learn a lot from that. At the end of the voyage, we will invite all of our guests to submit a few images. The photo team will put them together in a slideshow, and we will show this usually on the last evening of the voyage. It's really a highlight. It's fun to see your trip seen through the eyes of your fellow travelers. Everybody has something different that they think is worth photographing, and different ways of photographing. So that's one of our photo instructors, Mike Nolan, with his big camera. On the top, down below, you have photographed what we would call a breakout session, where you're invited to come up for one-on-one sessions of how to get to know your camera. So bring your camera, but the photo team would also ask you to bring your photo manual as well. They don't have every make of camera out there memorized. Bring your camera, bring your manual as well, and if you get a new camera for your trip, try it out a little bit before you come. You'll be amazed at how much your photographic skills will improve on the voyage. So what is a day in Antarctica? It's hard to say. We start off the trip with what we call intentions. This is what the captain and expedition leader thinks maybe we might be able to do, picking spots that they think might be good spots to include on this particular voyage. But weather conditions change, wildlife conditions change, so we often say the intentions only give us something from which to deviate. We're making decisions on the fly, day by day. You might be landing, as you see, sliding down the snow. You might be kayaking, coming up for a close encounter with a Weddell seal. You might be taking a Zodiac cruise around the ice, or talk about this in a moment. You see those three people are standing, but they're wearing their life vests. They're actually standing on the sea ice. When conditions are right, and I'll show you a slide in just a moment, we can actually get off of the ship and go for a stroll over the ice. And it's pretty thrilling to be standing on 5 or 6 feet of ice under which there are 2,800 feet of water. So flexibility, spontaneity, trust the judgment of your captain, the judgment of your expedition team to make the decisions that will give you the maximum experience. We're not going to schedule kayaking in advance. We're going to pick the right space and the right conditions. If we see whales, we might decide to spend time with whales. Instead of doing the landing that we had planned, we'll move the landing off to the next day. So flexibility, spontaneity, that's what sets an expedition apart from a cruise. As we say, every day is different. And one of the things I hear all of the time is, this day was spectacular. How could you possibly top it? And we kind of say, well, just wait. We'll see what the next day has to bring. We might go farther south, moving through the ice. We might have some time for you to just sit and watch and observe Antarctica going by. You might take a time to book a massage, a sauna, some exercise in the exercise area. It's hard to say, but over the space of a trip, you'll be able to fit it all in. At the end of each day, imagine you're out on a Zodiac cruise around icebergs with your naturalist talking about Antarctic ice and why icebergs are blue. And that was at 4:30. At 5 o'clock, your Zodiac brought you back to the ship. At 5:15, you were in a warm and comfortable shower. And at 6 o'clock, you were gathering up in the lounge, enjoying an adult beverage, sharing your experiences with your fellow guests. And along about 6:30, we will break for what we call evening recap, when our naturalists will present some information, again, about the activities of the day, or perhaps what we're anticipating the next day, telling you a story about Antarctic explorers, sharing some pictures with you. This is our evening recap, and it's always a great deal of fun. It's also a time for you to raise questions that you might have. it becomes a very educational experience. We also use this area for presentations. We might give a talk on marine mammals. We almost surely would give a talk on penguins. We're likely to give you a talk on global climate change and the polar regions, talks that fit the itinerary of your trip. We carry what we call a video chronicler. This is a professional videographer who will shoot and edit a video of your trip. And I really want to emphasize, this is your trip. The footage is all archived and sent away at the end of one trip, and we start the next trip all over again. Everything you see in the video chronicle will be coming from your trip. And of course, this will be offered for sale at the end of the voyage. It's something for you to take home, share with your friends, share with your family, to share the experiences that you have had in Antarctica. And if it makes them interested in coming to Antarctica later, so much the better. So again, there are the two ships. You'll see in the top ship, the Explorer, the captain has, we call it docking. He's driven the ship right into the ice until the ice stops. We'll get out, test the ice, and finding it sturdy and safe, we will invite you to step off of the ship and have an excursion walking over the ice of Antarctica. I will say this is more likely to occur in the earlier part of the season, November, December, probably January. If walking on the ice of Antarctica is an experience you've always wanted, the early season is something you should think about. We're more likely to find the ice breaking up later in the season, late January, February. We're more likely to be able to go farther south, perhaps all the way to the Antarctic Circle. So if you've been to the Antarctic Circle and you want to visit both of these two great geographic landmarks, the Antarctic Circle might be more accessible in a late January or February trip. Every time of the season has something to offer, and it's not always the same. Here, I mentioned the concept of an expedition ship. What I love about these ships are the various places they have. The lower right hand looking out over the bow, getting in close. I think that's probably a breaching whale off in the distance in front of the ship. A little higher vantage point in front of what we call the chart room. You see that row of windows up here? That's the ship's bridge. And contrary to most cruise ships, we have what we call an open bridge policy. You are invited, not just when we tell you, but whenever you wish, to come up and join us on the bridge. We have only one rule: don't push any buttons, but beyond that, you're welcome to come up. If the officers are not fully paying attention to going through ice navigation, this might be a time when they can tell you something about what it's like to navigate a ship in the Antarctic. They're also, of course, great with all their experience, knowledgeable about the wildlife. Another spot, a wonderful spot, is our library and expedition lounge way up high. Doesn't that look like a comfortable place to sit and watch Antarctica pass by? Library emphasizing the polar regions. Here's an example of one of the cabins. This one happens to be on the stern of the Explorer. Very comfortable cabins. This is a double cabin, a little bit smaller, lacks a balcony, but double beds. So if you prefer double beds, perhaps if we have two ladies or two men traveling together, we have cabins with double beds. Large windows, again, through which you can watch Antarctica passing by. Very, very comfortable heads. If any of you have been on our ships, the Sea Lion and Sea Bird, perhaps in Alaska, Baja California, or Panama, Costa Rica, you know that those have bathrooms, heads, which could be described as a little bit compact and challenging. These are much, much more comfortable. Here we have cabins on the Orion, very similar, very comfortable, sitting areas, viewing areas. I think you're going to love them. The Cuisine, very, very fine. Years ago, Sven came to the realization, just because it's an expedition, we don't have to eat that way. So no, you will not eat hardtack and pemmican. We have a galley. The head chefs, most of our head chefs are Swedish. We have a galley team that are trained to provide the finest of meals. I guess the Orion would not be, this is a head chef from the Orion, but both chefs, most meals are sit-down meals served from a menu. You're offered your choice of a meat option, a seafood, a fish or seafood option, and a vegetarian option. And many people choose the vegetarian just because they are so attractive. Breakfast and lunch are served buffet style. This is our one of our hotel managers, Henrik, bringing wine to the table. Up on the top, this is enjoying the lounge. That's one of our bartenders, Pete, in the background. Just a comfortable place to gather, as I said, before dinner for recap or after dinner to continue because you're just too excited to go to sleep. It's a good place to gather and share your experiences of the day. Again, very informal, no need. The only tie you'll see will be on the bartenders or on the waiters. You have no need to dress formally. We have up above at least on Explorer, up above the lounge, we have what we call the wellness special. It has a sauna, it has exercise equipment, treadmill, elliptical trainers, it has free weights. We have a very, very talented massage therapist so if you're feeling a little sore from the day, you might want to make a visit to the wellness special area. The exercising room is a good way to work off that extra dessert you couldn't pass up at lunchtime. So once more, looking out from the ship, you'll notice I want to say something briefly about the weather. I think you're all interested in that. A parka, as Alyssa will explain for a moment, a parka is provided for you, and leave room in your suitcase because you will take the parka home with you. It is yours to keep. So it's not a pre-worn parka. It's new when it comes to you, and it is yours to keep as a memento, as a souvenir. Those of you who live in New Hampshire or Alaska will be especially happy to hear that. The conditions are usually in the vicinity of the freezing point. You're so comfortable, you'll want to bring with you good hat, good gloves, I mentioned good boots, warm socks. Your comfort level is largely set by the wind, not the temperature. But you can dress well for conditions. If you've got hat to cover your ears, you've got mittens or gloves to cover your hands, you'll do just fine. And with that,
Steve, thank you so very much. That was great. That was great first-hand information, especially for those of you who may not be familiar with Lindblad National Geographic, and I always learn something new from you, Steve. Okay, stand by to answer some questions for us, please. And I see people are starting to log on with questions. We have a number of them. Before we do, I'd like to say that our voyages are a great value. And guests often tell us that you can embark on our ships without $1 in your pocket and still have an amazing experience taking advantage of everything that we offer. Almost everything is included: accommodations, transfers to and from group flights, your meals aboard ship, of course, all activities and sightseeing, shore excursions, all Zodiac and kayak excursions, the fitness center and sauna that Steve pointed out, tips, taxes, all service charges. Of course, the services of our expedition team. Complete pre-journey information, including what to bring, and a reading list. And an expedition park. I did mention that. You did mention that earlier. For the upcoming season, we've commissioned a special Shackleton Centennial Parka that combines sort of a vintage style with high-tech fabric, and that'll be very fun for the 2014-15 season. I'd like to point out that we offer 2 itineraries, a 14-day to the Antarctic Peninsula and a 24-day including South Georgia and the Falklands that Steve went over so thoroughly. You can check out our website for full itinerary details, and of course your expedition specialist can walk you through all that. Also, you can extend your stay if you want to with optional extensions to Iguazu Falls in Argentina, or if you're going that far, you might want to hop over to Easter Island. Again, if you're inspired to make a new booking, take advantage of free airfare by reserving your place by March 31st. We encourage you to learn more on our website, expeditions.com. You'll find detailed itineraries, daily expedition reports sent live each day from the ship, videos, of course, staff biographies, and a lot more. All of our past webinars, including this one, can be viewed online at expeditions.com/webinars. And I suggest you request a copy of our Antarctica planning guide at expeditions.com/Antarctica. It's a real resource and a how-to guide on questions you should know before choosing your travel company. Steve, I'll turn it over to you again so we can take some questions. Let's see what's come in so far. Steve, will we get a list of things to purchase and when before our trip?
That's actually going to come from your department, isn't it, Alyssa?
Yes,
you will get a list.
It is. You will. You'll get a reading list. You'll get a list of things to pack, very thorough, lots of pre-trip information. And when will you get it? After you book, after you've made your deposit, you will get a large packet with all kinds of information in it.
I will briefly add one thing to this. If you live in Miami and you don't think you really need a pair of heavy rubber boots, we do now offer the opportunity for you to rent the boot, in which case it will be waiting for you on the ship and you don't have to transport it down and back. Of course, if we would prefer that you buy and bring your own boots, so then you can amortize the cost of your boots by making a trip to the Arctic as well. But if you wish, you can do that.
And we have another question that says, I understand that you cannot predict exactly where you will go on the peninsula, but do you tend to go to the same hot spots as the other cruise lines, actually go to the continent, or just islands off the coast? What about crossing the Antarctic Circle? I think you've talked about most of those things already.
Okay, yeah, we definitely will have you set foot on the Antarctic continent. It's important for people to touch the 7th continent. We will go to islands. We will go to the continent. We will go. We do not go to a completely unique set of places. We go to hotspots that we know. Other companies might go to some of these, but not at the same time. We have a system worked out in parallel with the other companies to assure that we do not have multiple expedition ships visiting the same spot at the same time.
Another question says, what percentage of January cruises are able to travel below the Antarctic Circle? That's pretty...
Ooh,
that's hard to say.
What percentage? The percentage increases as the month of January goes on. I would say the probability is less than 50% in the first half of January, becoming 50% or more in the second half of January, converging on very, very likely by the time we get to the end of January and early February.
Another question, can I go to Antarctica alone? Is there an added charge? Can't find a friend to go to this wonderful place with me. Actually, I might answer this one if you don't mind, Steve. Certainly you can go alone. It's a wonderful place. aboard ship to make friends and to share with people who have the same like-minded interest as yourself. There are solo cabins, and yes, there is an additional charge for the solo cabins, but I think you'll find that it's reasonable and industry standard. We also have a program called our Share Programs, which if you're interested in. And that is, you can sign up to share a cabin with a roommate that we will assign for you. We will try to find someone to assign for you. You'll meet them aboard ship. And if we cannot find a roommate for you, then you pay the double occupancy price. So that's kind of a nice feature. Let's see, one more question. Steve, what is the difference between the fall trips and the spring trips? Are there different animals, baby animals, more ice, weather?
Sure. More ice in spring than in fall. Spring I'm thinking November and early December. The same animals are there, of course. The penguins early in November, they're into arriving back, claiming their space, beginning to build their nests. We see them laying eggs. We see them copulating to fertilize the egg. We see them building their nests of stones, which they're stealing from their neighbor's nests, which is pretty amazing and humorous. The first young of the year were seen along about December 15th last year, and that would be fairly normal. So you get small chicks in late December. You get larger chicks in January. By the time you get to the middle of January, the chicks don't fit under their parents anymore. You get aggregations of chicks in what we call a creche while their adults are going out to feed. So there is a progression of breeding activities on the part of the birds. By the time you get to February, the young are becoming independent and molting into their adult-type feathers so they can go out to sea. I will say that the sightings of humpback whales tend to increase in frequency as the season goes on. We're more likely, let me say, I'm confident we're certain to see humpback whales in January, February, almost certain in the second half of December, a little more problematic perhaps in November because the whales are still coming down.
Okay, one or two questions left here. I'm going to combine. Some of them have questions about how long it takes to get from Ushuaia, Argentina, where we board the ship, to the peninsula, and what is the crossing like?
How long does it take? We usually would depart Ushuaia about 6 o'clock in the evening. The whole next day would be at sea. The following morning, Antarctica would be in sight, and we will make a landing the following day. So one full day, 2 nights and 1 full day at sea. What is the crossing like? You know, it's all up to Mother Nature and what you probably heard of the infamous Drake Passage. It's quite variable. Sometimes it can be smooth sailing, and sometimes it can be moderately surgy, but the ships are fully stabilized. Sometimes, a few times of the season, we will get what we would consider a fairly severe Drake crossing. And if you are prone to ocean motion, you might not enjoy that crossing particularly. In that circumstance, if you are sensitive, a good way to spend the crossing is lying on your bunk. And there are medications, meclizine, or some people are very successful with scopolamine at helping them get across. But I'm not going to entirely sugarcoat it. We can't tell you in advance. We're not going to be able to tell you now when we can schedule a smooth crossing next January. You just take your chance. Most of the time it's smooth. Every once in a while it's bouncy.
Okay, one last question here. Can everyone be on shore at the same time, or is there a limit to number of passengers allowed per landing?
by the regulations regarding tourism in Antarctica, 100 passengers can be ashore at a time. The Explorer carries 148. So what we will do is divide the ship's complement into what we call Zodiac groups, and so that we can take 100 people ashore, and those who are not ashore will be offered a Zodiac cruise around the ice, a chance to experience Antarctica in a different way. And as people leave the shore, we can then bring people from the Zodiacs ashore. To my knowledge, we never yet have had to run around and tell the people on shore, I'm sorry, you have to leave now so that the others can come ashore. Everybody has been able to stay as long as they want, and to my knowledge, it's always worked out very well.
Okay, we are now concluding today's webinar. Steve, thank you so much for participating, and thank you all for attending. If you have any further questions, please email us at webinar@expeditions.com. On behalf of Lindblad Expeditions National Geographic, we thank you for attending today and hope to welcome you aboard soon. Thank you.